Hi, I'm Susie Morgan, founder and director of training at Precision EMDR Academy. And today I want to cover a few things. First, I actually want to tell you a bit of my story. And the reason is because when I first started making these recordings, someone suggested that I talk about how I was able to get here to the point where I'm a consultant, I'm a trainer, I'm speaking at the EMDRIA conference, and I have a training company that's sponsoring the EMDRIA conference. And so I figured that would be actually a pretty interesting thing to tell you about, because not so that I can say, ooh, look what I've achieved, but really to show you that actually it's a totally attainable goal. It's something that you can follow certain steps and actually really create the practice and the focus of your career that you really want as a trauma therapist, and specifically as a specialist in EMDR therapy. And I really want to key in on two major components of that, which is certification and then also an advanced certification that we're offering now through our program at Precision EMDR Academy that focuses on EMDR with complex developmental trauma, which is so important. And then last, I want to talk about objections, the things that hold us back and the things that I hear from my consultees when they're saying, I don't see how that would matter, or that's really expensive, or I feel bad charging my clients for X, Y, and Z. So let's get started. First, let me tell you a little bit about my story. So I have been an EMDR therapist now for 20 years, and EMDR was the first thing that I trained in after I was licensed. And so 20 years ago, I was trained, in the time of the horse and buggies, basically, of EMDR therapy. There were no target sequence plans. There was no real focus on readiness or really how you assess for dissociation or anything like that. You got the basics. And sadly, a lot of the trainings that are still out there really don't cover a lot of those things in depth, but we do have a lot of advancements in the field about those things. But back then, I lived in a small town, and I really didn't have access to a lot of the trainings even that were out at that time. And there was only a handful, but it still was hard for me as a young therapist to be able to fly all over the country to attend those things, or even to know where I should be getting those trainings. So I was just kind of trucking along, making my way and trying to figure things out. I hired a consultant to become certified, and eventually became a consultant in training and a consultant. And that's where the drama began. And the handful of stories I want to tell you, started there. So I ended up moving out of that small town to San Diego, just, much bigger pond. And when I started to network, to get to know people, something really painful happened. This field isn't always so friendly. And so I attended a networking group and was saying I was a new consultant and introducing myself. And what turned out to happen is I asked a question which indicated I didn't know a certain term, and that I also didn't know the latest and greatest that had come down from Francine Shapiro's EMDR Institute about target sequence planning. It was the first real target sequence planning method that was out in the world at that point. And the reason why I didn't know those things, well, I had the most supportive mentor, but but she wasn't so concerned that I knew every single term. It was really just that conceptually I knew what I was doing. And so I didn't know every single term. And also, because I wasn't trained through the Institute, wasn't privy to the things that sort of were coming down from, that stream. And there can be something that's really, tricky about this field, where it can be cliquish. Things can be siloed, and you're in or you're out, or that sort of thing, which I think is a real shame in a field where we are trauma therapists. But what ended up happening is, because I didn't know those two things, this person blasted an email to all of the consultants in the EMDR International Association saying, this young whippersnapper, new consultant, had shown up and was trying to network, and they didn't know X and they didn't know Y, and what should she do? And the impact on me was severe, so painful. I was new, I was young, and I was just getting my sea legs as a brand new consultant and in a new town. And so I just went inward, but I also buckled down. And this has turned out to be one of the biggest gifts ultimately, because what ended up happening is I stopped doing any consultation, which is a bit of a shame, but I then went to this training and that training and this training and that training. And I just dug in because I didn't want to not know a thing. I scoured the books. I memorized the terms. I memorized every single thing. So I knew it backwards and forwards. And so that I would never, hopefully, experience that kind of embarrassment again. And so what that did was I learned a lot of stuff. And then another level happened where I had, 2 clients who I did the DES with, which is a lot of times, that's what's typically taught in most of the standard EMDR trainings for how you assess dissociation. Not a lot is taught about dissociation per se and what you should be even looking for, but it's like, just do the DES, you'll be fine. You will not be fine. So basically, at least that's what I found out. I ended up missing dissociative identity disorder with 2 clients. And luckily, they were so gracious with me and we played catch up, and they were willing to stick with me while I learned more of all the things. Because from then on, or at that point, I went, flew all over the country. I think it was like 1 training a month to every single person I could learn from about dissociation. And so was able to gather all these different nuanced pieces, hired Dolores Mascara, Kathy Martin out in New York to provide me individual consultations so I'd really understand all the different, flavors and theories of treating dissociative identity disorder, especially with EMDR therapy. And so, on top of that, I was already, I did Jim Knight's training twice because I really, really, really knew that I needed to understand his stuff backwards and forwards. I went out to, Virginia, I think it was, for Dini Laliotis. I went, I don't know. It was a lot of trainings. But ultimately, what it did was it gave me all of this information. And then that's what brings us to the next part of the story is I was sitting with a client who she's now been very public that I'm her therapist. And I actually was on her podcast recently because we worked together years ago. But Bree Argetsinger, who is Betty Rucker, she was an influencer, and so she had, and she's really an advocate for women's mental and physical health, and so she had said she was referring all these people to EMDR therapy, but she wasn't getting what she was getting from me, and all of a sudden that all that focus I had on my insecurity and what I didn't know turned into a moment of insight that said, "Whoa, I actually have gathered a lot of things." And one of the things that I had learned is that I don't make up new things so much, but I do synthesize well. And so what I had done was I had curated and synthesized all these different things that I had learned and turned this into a process for readiness, for really seeing through the preparation and history gathering exercises what needed to be seen in order to know kind of if I was ready to start memory reprocessing or if I needed to delay and really do more front loading and what sort. I had really developed out a target sequence plan that really gathered bits from things that I had really developed before, the official weighted target sequence plan came down on high. When I was all by myself over in, the little town, I had developed a way to organize treatment around trauma memory networks. And so then I was able to put those things together into a really, systematized fashion. I also pulled in, some of Andrew Leeds stuff and things like that with all that as well. So I had developed out readiness and target sequence planning and these different aspects into a system. And then I was finding with my consultees that, they really struggled because these things were missing in what they had been trained in. And so I all of a sudden had eyes to see that there was something worth sharing. And in fact, I had through all of this been able to gather something really valuable. And so my consultees were benefiting. And then I created a course because I was like, wait, I'm teaching the same thing to everybody. So let me create a course at this point. So then, fast forward, it was COVID. I had been offered the opportunity to be a trainer and was training with someone else's curriculum, but it didn't feel like a really good fit for me. And so, there was COVID. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, all of that. And a friend sat me down who had started to train for another agency. And she said, Susie, I am secretly teaching these systems you've developed to my consultees. And I'm not going to say who she is, even though I'm really grateful for this conversation because I don't want to get her busted. But that spurred me on to say, okay, I'll create this curriculum. And as a result, ended up creating advanced trainings and things like that. But ultimately, what I learned from this is that there is so much wisdom in the field. There is a lot missing in some of our more simplistic ways of teaching basic training. And I really am passionate now about supporting clinicians in, if I can get them from the start, I want them in basic training so I can teach them this sort of eyes to see what they need to see, how to organize treatment and how to really incorporate complex trauma, to really understand dissociation in ways that they need to and assess for that, all those things. But I learned also that, the best EMDR therapy is by putting it all together, all that wisdom together. And so as a result, my practice has been full this entire time. And my, and my feedback from consultees is this really moves them forward. And so that's that bit of wisdom that I wanted to share with you that says, if your goal is to create a really impactful trauma therapy, practice or to teach or, whatever the case might be, train, learn all the things and then try them, put them into action. And it makes all the difference in the world in your efficacy, but also in being able to build a thriving practice and go after what you want to go after. So steps in that I think are really important to understand are certification and then also the advanced certification possibilities. The three major components for EMDRIA certification are an EMDRIA-approved basic training, then 20 hours of consultation towards certification, and then 12 additional hours of advanced training that is EMDRIA approved. Now, people say, oh my gosh, that's so much. But here's the thing, you need it. So basic training is the first learning that you get. It helps create the foundation where you can fit in all that additional information, but you're learning scripts, you're learning protocols. It's awkward. There's a lot of information that you have to wrap your head around and a lot of procedural little details that you need to learn, which ultimately are pretty easy long term, but at first it's overwhelming across the board for everyone. And then you have to start implementing with clients and you'll learn, oh, this is a little tricky. This is, EMDR sounds kind of simple in certain ways, but because, boy, they can make scripts for it and all that. But people are not simple. There's so much in terms of the complexity of trauma memory networks, the complexity of how attachment interferes with that or influences that. And then their current life situations, like you put all that together, you need to know a lot of things. And so when you're getting started, you really need support. So one of the things we do with our basic training is we immediately have options for jumping into a certification consultation group that is also curriculumed with our part one of our advanced training in complex developmental trauma, because it really is something where as you really start to implement, you really start to have questions. And one of the pieces of feedback that I've gotten, which is kind of exciting, is that clinicians are like, oh yeah, this is actually answering the questions that I'm having. Like taking this training right now, right after basic training is helping answer those questions. But then also they're bringing it to group and they're really being able to hash it out. And then in their individual training, they're doing their skills verification. And that is so critical because as intimidating it is to show a video of your work and all this sort of thing, that's where I, as a consultant, am able to see the things you wouldn't even know to ask about. So it's not about getting an A as much in my mind. It's like, no, like I want to be able to see the things that are going to really optimize what you're able to do and help you just, really be skillful and wise in your work. So that is certification, but the reason why I created an advanced certification is like, oh my goodness, that is not enough. Certification is about standard protocol, but we need to know all these things that are learned over these years from all these different wise mentors in the field. And so that's what I did. I put that all into an advanced certification. And again, people are like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of money, because it is rigorous. You can do it simultaneously to doing your certification, as long as you're working with those complex developmental trauma clients, which you probably are anyways. But really, go deeper in terms of some of that learning that is necessary, and require it so that you really understand some of the fancy footwork that you kind of need to know across the board. And so instead of investing in, years and years of all sorts of random trainings and putting them together, this kind of serves it up for you in an organized fashion, so that then you can go on and train with different people, but you're plugging in that learning now to a really solid, comprehensive foundation. And then you're really also able to say, okay, like I have a rubric, I have a conceptualization for what it means to assess for attachment, assess all of the trauma memory networks that are connected to my client's symptoms, and really know how to, to strategically target my treatment. And on top of that, you get mentoring, you get supporting, because that is, I think, one of the things that is missing so much in this field is someone who's like holding your hand, spurring you on to, really like do that next scary thing, dive in deeper here or there, or is giving you wisdom on like, hey, go train with this person, go train in that. And helping you navigate this in a little less of a fear-based and chaotic way than I did. So objections. This is too expensive. This is too much. If I invest in this, will it really pay off? I mean, bottom line is yes. The more skilled we are, the more specialized we are, the more we are able to have practices that are effective, which means they stay full. It also means that we can charge rates that allow us to have a livable wage. One of the biggest things that I think is so concerning about our field as being a highly female-oriented field is we're just supposed to serve, but not make money. And we feel guilt about making money and charging money. But the reality is we hold so much responsibility for our clients' lives, honestly, as well as their well-being. And so to do that well, we need to be trained well. And that is expensive. And there also is a cost to us. There's a cost to us if we are taking that time away from, let's say you have children at home, you're at work rather than being with those children. That's a cost. So if we're not charging for that time we're away, is that really making it worthwhile? There are things where, for me, I didn't have a partner for many of these years. And so there's no one else paying the bills. I don't have a trust fund. And so I have to charge enough to be able to put a roof over my head and be able to afford my life. And also to afford ongoing training and consultation. And that costs money. So I think one of these things is that you have to really think in a bigger picture other than just saying what matters most is that I offer cheap therapy. What matters most is that you offer high quality therapy, effective therapy, safe therapy that is really, you are really equipped to see what you need to see, do what you need to do to make effective change for your clients. And it also is okay, I think, to then say, if I was in business, I'd be okay charging money for, making cereal or something. So it's really okay for me to charge money for doing this profound, highly, highly intense and important work. So anyways, I hope that hearing a little bit more about my story helps you see that there is a path forward for you, and hopefully an easier one and one that feels more supported. And then also, if what I'm talking about with our programs and with what we offer that feels interesting to you, you can always reach out to me personally and I'll tell you more about it. We also have our whole thing spelled out on the website that says this is how you do certification, how you pursue that with MDRIA, but this is also how you go further with advanced certification and how we can support you in that. And, I want you to, if you're one of these people who is, your heart is in this work, and that makes it hard to then say, like, I need to charge for it too. I hope that just a couple of my comments about the responsibility and the costs and all of these different things, but also the benefits of ongoing training, will help you kind of think about those things. And I am more than happy to support you along the way in any way I can. So feel free to reach out, make comments, reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook at Precision EMDR. And feel free to email me at Susie@precisionemdr.com. And I would, like I said, love to support you in any way I can.